This past Monday, 4-H, a community club that teaches kids responsibility through service and projects, had a new project to take care of in Assaria. I decided to go out and see what was happening.
I'm Cheryl Spare. I'm an organizational leader with Friendly Valley 4-H Club. 4-H is a national organization. I believe it's the largest national organization for young people. And at this point, our Friendly Valley Club is a rather young club. We have one senior member who was not able to be here today, but we have lots of young members that are learning about 4-H and learning to explore different projects that they work on over the year. And usually then at the end of the 4-H year, we have a county fair that they get to display their projects in, and judges give them ideas of how to make the best better, which is the club motto. And 4-H is just a really neat organization because it really emphasizes growing in leadership and in citizenship and in community service. And that's the three things about it that I just really, really like is kids learn to give to their communities instead of just receive. And there's nothing wrong with receiving from your community, but 4-H really builds in that desire to give back to your community. And so what the kids today are doing is giving back to their community. Many of them were in preschool here at this church and played on that little playground there. And so here, as they now are in elementary school, they can come back and clean that up and just feel really good about improving their local community church facility here. They were pulling weeds over there in our in the Assaria Lutheran Church's playground area, and they were also pulling little trees that were coming up, and they were learning about seeing the acorn and the little tree, and they were talking about that while they were doing their work, and that was kind of fun to see that. So there was lots of sticks and branches that had fallen down, and they were getting quite the pile of those and getting them out of the playground area. So the preschool kids can play more freely. A couple of the boys in this club have participated in a project that it used to be called Self-Determined, and now it will have a new name, but it really allows them to do things like Legos, to build things out of Lego projects, and that's been a fun thing for them to explore. And some of our 4-Hers will have bucket calves. That's oftentimes a very favorite project for some of them to get involved in. They can do all kinds of different things. There's foods project where they can explore cooking and baking. There's art projects that can be a wide variety of things that they do. They also can do performing arts projects, which oftentimes is the favorite of kids that are into drama or music. They can take even some of the things that they learn at school and do them in a performance setting at the fair. Or, for example, this club oftentimes has had a fundraising spaghetti feed dinner that we put on once a year, and a lot of times we've had music events there where we perform for a whole crowd of people here at the church on an evening in February or March, just to earn money, and it's a real fun way for them to prepare. And they also do projects where they're learning to speak in front of people. Now, because our club is so young, these kids are just getting started with that. And sometimes, even just trying to speak for a few minutes in front of the club is quite a challenge, but they are growing and learning every time they do it. They get a little bit better. And then there's different times during the year where they have opportunities to do what's called a project talk or a demonstration or an illustrated talk, and compete with other kids that are also doing those same things. So that's an opportunity. They also learn a lot about parliamentary procedure. And I know my husband has said, as he's involved with a bunch of boards in the area here, he really values people who have been in 4-H, know how to run a business meeting, or like a board meeting. And so these kids learn little by little each meeting to do such parliamentary procedure, and we all grow from that. Well, we're actually all really looking forward to the COVID restrictions being lifted, so that especially at the county fair, that is the big event of the year, and I think that's going to be a really exciting time, because last summer we didn't really have a normal fair, and so this will be a super exciting fair to all get back together again in our district and see kids from other clubs. There will be leadership responsibilities there at the fair also. Some of our kids will sit beside the judge as they judge something like photography, for example, and watch what the judge comments about as the different 4-Hers bring their different photographs in. And they'll learn, just by being there to help put on ribbons, when the judge decides which ribbon this 4-Her will get. One thing I wanted to comment on, too, is just the history of this club. Sure. It is actually over 75 years old. And several years ago, we did kind of a celebration of that. And the club actually, there was one club that started here in Assaria, and it kind of almost died out, and then another club, another name for the club came about, and some of these young men here that have been working, and one of the little girls too, their great-grandfather was one of the people that kept the Friendly Valley Club going as, the war times came, and, I just realized it is the kids' great-great-grandpa that helped keep the Friendly Valley 4-H Club alive many, many, many decades back. So I want to get that straight. Some of these kids in the club now, their great-great-grandfather was the one that was a leader for the club and kept it going when it was really hard to keep it going. It kind of evolved into 3 different clubs over the years, but it is still going and thriving, and it isn't just kids from the Assaria community. There's kids from Lindsborg or the Fallen area that come to this club too, and different kids can pick whichever club they want to be in. So I just think that's kind of neat that there's history. These kids' grandma was in the same club that I was in, which is Friendly Valley, and at the same time. And I remember, and I'm sure their grandma remembers too, going out and doing a club project like this, a club community service project, cleaning up on a roadside park that was on 81 Highway. Before the interstate was even there, we were doing club community service projects like cleanup, around the area. So it's kind of fun to think back and realize every year there's something that we decide to do, and some years there are several different projects that we decide to do. Last year at Memorial Day, Friendly Valley cleaned up the cemetery that's right adjacent to this playground, where they were out working a little bit earlier, but we spent several hours that Memorial Day weekend getting it cleaned up. So it was a great project too. I think just to encourage families to consider 4-H as a priority for their child. There's so many things that, parents have choices about, and I understand that. But 4-H really does build a very well-balanced person. And many of the people who have come out of 4-H circles go on to be extremely responsible, good citizens in our nation and in our world. And that's part of what we try to build into kids, that they're not just serving their local community, but on beyond their local community too. And I think 4-H has a lot to offer.
How can people get involved if they want to?
Well, one way is to contact the local extension office. The Central Kansas District Extension Office would be a place to start there in Salina. There's also a website. The CKD website would be easy to find online. And you also, of course, could talk to somebody like me who's an organizational leader. The Extension Office would give you the names of the organizational leaders that are in the area that you might be from.
Patrick, second grade. Song and recreation.
Canton, second grade. Member. Caden, fourth grade. Secretary.
Christian, fourth grade. Reporter.
Nolan, fourth grade. Treasure.
What's your guys' favorite thing about 4-H?
My favorite thing is 4-H camp.
My favorite thing is being with my friends.
My favorite thing is going to 4-H camp and getting to show exhibits at the fair. My favorite thing is ASYP.
My favorite thing is the fair.
Okay, yeah. Now, does anyone want to talk on kind of what you're doing today, specifically? I'm going to pass the mic.
So today we're cleaning up the church, so we picked up sticks and picked weeds at the garden, and then we took some of the poles in the graveyard and we replaced them and hammered them back in.
Okay, yeah. What are some things you guys have, or what have you learned, that's maybe helped you to kind of do some of this stuff? Or maybe some of your favorite things you've learned in 4-H.
How to weld.
Anyone else have any favorite things they've learned? Or?
How to be a treasure and how, to be responsible for all the papers and everything.
Yeah, go ahead.
How to build a model rocket. How to make chocolate fudge.
Last year it wasn't the best 4-H camp because it was all virtual. And the year before that, I only got to stay for 2 days. One day.
I did comment that some of the 4-Hers here, their grandma was in 4-H when I was, but also their grandpa. And I think it's really neat when it's a very generational sort of thing. And a lot of clubs don't necessarily have that as a feature. It's neat too because these kids, several of them that were working here today, their parents were also in 4-H. Some in this club and some, from other clubs around Kansas. But that is one thing that's really cool about 4-H. It's a very family-oriented club, and you do things together as a family. Very often you go to the meetings together, you do these service projects together, you participate in the fair together, and that really builds lifelong friendships that go on for generations. So I think that's a really cool thing to think about as you, if you're people that are considering 4-H as an option for your family, that's one of the real pluses for 4-H.